already have goosebumps, and that pretty much captured, I think, where we are this morning. Today, we're going to have a very different discussion than the sessions that we had yesterday. I'm very humbled, and I think that what you just saw from the group is that we are as well, to be here with 4 students, and note 4 female students, from Marjory Stoneman Douglas. Just a little more than 6 months ago, these Parkland high schoolers experienced a tragedy that no child should ever witness. It happened at a place where they should be safe, their school. I know the vast majority of us in this room are parents, and what happened in Parkland that day is nearly unfathomable to each of us. And I suspect it still is for the families of Sari and Casey who are here with us today. But these brave students and their peers, as was said before, stepped up and fought back. They spoke up and took us as adults to task for not providing them with a safe environment. And the stakes couldn't be higher. On an average day, nearly 100 Americans are killed by guns and hundreds more are wounded. Our nation's gun homicide rate is more than 25 times higher than other developed countries. These students, they've changed minds and they've made progress on what has arguably been one of the third rails and untouchable topics in American policy, gun violence prevention. And today we're going to hear their stories, hear directly from them about what they've learned over the past few months, the actions they've taken, how each of them has transformed from high school student into powerful activists, and what they have planned for the future, and what advice they have for us as communicators, employers, and marketers. But before we get started, let me introduce them. We're going to take a minute to look at what they've been up to for the past few months, and then we'll get into the talk. So to my left is Sari Kaufman. Sari, can you just tell us how old you are, what grade you are, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm Sari Kaufman. I'm 16 years old and a junior at Marjory Stoneman Douglas.
I'm Casey Sherman. I'm 17 and a senior at Marjory Stoneman Douglas.
I'm Delaney Tarr. I'm 18 and I am a recent graduate of Stoneman Douglas.
I'm Sophie Whitney and I'm 18 and I'm also a recent graduate of Stoneman Douglas.
You guys play the video now? Not that one.
This is more than just one day, one event. This is a movement. This is a movement relying on the persistence and the passion of its people.
We are excited to announce March for Our Lives, Road to Change. We will go from city to city, state to state. We are going to harness the passion we witnessed on March 24th.
We traveled to the Midwest, the South, and now we're in California.
The one thing that teenagers are good at is rebel.
We should have universal background checks with safe storage laws, ban high-capacity magazines.
I'm here with the March for Our Lives team, and we're here to create change throughout the world.
Just got to continue to fight, continue fighting together and building strong coalitions around the country.
Well, before I start, I like to connect with my audience, so ask you a question. Who here has been affected by gun violence or knows someone that's been affected by gun violence? Can you raise your hand? Can you guys take a look around the room and see how many hands are up? Crazy, isn't it?
Each individual on this tour and all these people around America have faced tragedies.
But all the trauma that's happened in our lives and having to bring that back up every day, bringing those memories up every day, they don't have time to get old.
None of us should be here right now. We should not be talking about this right now. We do not just come to a town hall and we do not tell our stories here for no reason. It takes you guys, every single one of you, to participate in this democracy.
On our road to change, actually we registered over 10,000 voters, and that's pretty damn good. It's unfortunate that people don't see behind the scenes a lot, because I feel like they would be much more open to the idea of young people leading.
We are a group of 15 to 20-year-olds running this organization and calling everything that we do.
I believe that this had to be teenagers. Every social movement in this country has had teenagers at the helm of it. You can't twist a teenager's world upside down and expect for them not to do anything about it. And you're getting a revolution.
Let's start with each of you guys just telling us your story. Sorry.
So the day after February 14th, I was sitting in my bed. I didn't know what to do. I just lost one of my good friends. So I started writing, and I found that it was a really good coping mechanism. the past November, I actually debated about universal background checks for my debate team. So I started writing an editorial that got published in several news outlets. And I just felt a little better making my voice heard. And then the next day, Casey called me and asked if I wanted to help organize the March for Our Lives in our local town, Parkland. And of course, I said yes, I couldn't turn it down. And I was in charge of voter registration. So I started calling voter registration organizations all over Florida. And they came down on March 24th. We had 30,000 people who attended the march. In just a couple hours, we got 1,000 people registered to vote. All the organizations were coming to me and saying that was record-breaking history, that they got so many people registered in just a short amount of time. And I knew from there that this movement was just going to continue to grow. And I've learned a lot over the past few months. It's definitely been emotional and really hard to continue after losing so many people from our community. But this has really helped us push forward. And from a communication aspect, I think what we have learned is how important civic engagement is. And just like you saw in the video, for youth talking to each other, and especially on a controversial issue like gun control, to be able to talk and look at both sides is really important. And increased civic engagement among the youth is also important. And one thing just from yesterday at the conference, seeing the other side of business, and seeing the other perspective, how business can be so influential in social change. And I think it's really important that we come together and continue to push the social change through every perspective that we live through during our years. And I think that's how we can create the best change.
So, as a student at Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, after the 14th, it was really hard to know what to do with yourself. And as soon as I got the opportunity to be part of the March for Our Lives in Parkland, I jumped at it. And I took on the role of lead student coordinator and immediately started planning and started building up this team of incredible young student leaders. And over the course of 1 month, we had to do work that I never really thought I'd have to be doing. I learned things about business that I'd never known before. I learned what the difference between a 501c3 and 501c4 was. And we had to go to City Hall and convince a town of 25,000 to host a march that catered to 30,000. And I think that it was probably one of the most emotionally taxing experiences that I've ever had, but also one of the most emotionally rewarding, because I've never felt a pride like I felt that day, standing on that stage, watching my peers on that stage. The March in Parkland was different than it was in places all around the world, and we heard from victims' families, the injured students, including Sari and myself, and then afterwards we marched to the memorial site at our school and back. And I remember coming back to the park where the rally had been held after we marched, and the students who had planned it, we all kind of sat in this circle and looked at each other, and you could feel this exhaustion, but you could also feel the passion and the love and the pride. And I remember looking at all of them, and I said, "So, what's next?" And everyone kind of laughed and shook their heads, but it really got us thinking, what were we going to do next? And we came to this idea of creating this organization called Empower the People. And Empower the People is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, Marjory Stoneman Douglas student-led movement aiming to increase students' voices on both the social and political stages. And we aim to elevate their voices through not just activism and education, but also through the ballot box.
I think there's a commonality between a lot of our stories in that immediately after the shooting, we didn't know what to do. And we had so many emotions, so much going on in our heads and in our community that we channeled it through interviews, through op-eds, through speaking out. Personally, I did my first interview the day after the shooting, and it was the first time that I was able to actually channel my emotions about everything that happened. Before that, I had been completely numb to it all, but when I started talking about it to this incredibly kind reporter, it just all came flooding out. And from there on, I realized that this is what I needed to keep doing, because not only did it help me, it helped the people around me. It showed them the brutal reality of a situation like this, of the life that we're living and the life that we're going to have to continue to live. And I don't think we ever expected it to last as long as it did or to grow as big as it did. I personally thought that the cameras were going to go away after 2 weeks and that we were going to be forgotten about like so many other tragedies before, but The students came together on our living room floors in late night meetings, just discussing what we were going to do, and out of that was born the National March for Our Lives, which branched into so many other marches like Parkland and all over the country with over 800 sibling marches. And it became this incredible experience of growth and learning and realization of our own power, of our own voices, and how much we can do as young people, and how much you guys can do too. We did the march. It was incredible. We had over 800,000 people there. But after that, we realized that we needed to keep working. We needed to keep moving. And out of that was born the Road to Change, which was our tour across the summer. It was a voter registration effort. We went all across the country. We went all through the state of Florida. And since then, we've been working on just really engaging everyone.
That was good. I mean, exactly what they said. After something so terrible happens, like, what are you supposed to do? We were all still in high school. We were all distraught and we were all confused. But I know that a bunch of my friends and I, we were sitting on our living room floors and we were talking about, like, what do we do with this platform that we have now? Because everyone was like the entire country, the entire world was looking at us, and we knew we didn't want to use. We wanted to use this to make something good out of it because there was so much sadness in our town that we were brainstorming. We wanted to figure out what we were going to do, and we decided. We did the march. It reached way more people than I think we ever could imagine reaching in general, let alone for something so polarizing. And then we did the march, 800 plus sibling marches. What do we do now? There are so many kids mobilized. They want to do something, but what do? So we do the Road to Change. We go around the entire country and we talk to these people because what we realized is that a lot of people see us on TV and they think that we're some crazy like crisis actors we have a script, that we're being paid to do this. But if you see us face to face and you talk to us, you realize that we're just kids that went through something terrible that want to make something good out of it. And the Road to Change was completely successful. We registered over 10,000 voters, and now we have a huge month and a half ahead of us before the midterms, and we're really working on building out chapter organizations across the country because so many students and young people across the country want to make a difference, and they are realizing now that their voice is super important.
Just picking up on the Road to Change, one of the things that was really special is that you guys picked people up as you went. Can you explain what that means and sort of what the intent was?
Yeah, I mean, we only had one experience of gun violence, and it might be our only experience for the rest of our lives, but we can't speak for everyone's experience of gun violence because there are so many different facets. There's domestic abuse, there's inner city gun violence, there's suicides because of gun violence. So we didn't want to speak for other people. So we found people that had those experiences, and we wanted to give them a platform because people were listening to us. But school shootings are not the only kind of gun violence that occurs in this country.
Mm-hmm. So you guys talked about this a little bit, but this was really different. The fact that you are still in the headlines, that we've really made a shift in sort of the national debate around gun violence prevention. Can you tell us what you did that you think made it different this time?
I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play. Sometimes it's the aspects of our own privilege that we're perfectly willing to acknowledge. We're coming from Parkland, which is a relatively wealthy town. We were a group of wealthier white kids who are talking about an issue that's happening to them, and we were given a platform that other people aren't necessarily. But we also use social media in a way that I don't think many other groups have had the opportunity to do. A lot of us are teenagers who, have Twitter brain. We speak the language. We know how to send out a fiery tweet in 3 seconds and get a couple 100,000 retweets. It's just something that we're good at. And it was a strength that we really did play to, especially right after the shooting, when we started going viral and our names started being trending topics on Twitter. It was this strange, surreal world where something that we had spent so much time on before, wasting our time, became essentially our job. And that was a really good, important thing for us, was that we could use social media to create a direct message to give to people, rather than just going on the news and having an interview that might be edited together to seem a certain way. We were directly saying what we wanted people to hear, and they were receiving it right in their phones. It was so much easier to connect with them. And I think that there's a lot of other aspects, but those are the two that were most notable to me.
Casey, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely about technology because we've never been as advanced as we are now. And I think another part of it is when Sandy Hook happened, the parents went to Capitol Hill, they lobbied, they tried to make a change, but nothing really caught on, not just because of technology, but because the people of America didn't have anybody to get behind. And then after we lived through it, they had this set of faces, these people that they could connect with and relate to that reminded them of friends at home who went through the same issues as they did. And it was people that they could support and really rally behind. And I think that that made a really huge difference.
Did you want to add something, sorry?
Yeah, and to add, since we had an event, the news had to cover before and after it, and that really perpetuated us getting a lot more coverage than just, like Delaney said, only 2 weeks after, and then it's out of the news cycle. So that really helped as well.
You have an audience here of corporate leaders who I suspect now are all wondering how they can help. What advice would you have for them, and what would you ask them to do to help support your cause?
I mean, the first thing is voting. It's pretty important. We're usually talking to teenagers who can vote, so it's very exciting to know that you guys are all at the right age to be able to do so. But it's more than that, because we as young people, we can be influential in our own ways, but you guys have the resources to be influential in world markets, and that's an incredibly exciting thing for us. It's an opportunity that we haven't necessarily been granted before. But when you look at organizations like Levi's, who are currently partnering with Headcount on voting and voter registration, like products and campaigns, that's really accessible to young people, to everybody, honestly, because it's taking a language that so many people speak, taking something that so many people are interested in and engaged in, and just sneaking in the topic of voting and voter registration. It's almost like tricking people into caring, but it works. It truly works. And we've been partnering with so many different groups and companies and organizations that have been pushing out these campaigns, and it's become so much more influential because it is in every facet of people's lives. And if we can truly show people the importance of voting, of change, social change, all of it, in every part of their lives, we can get a lot more done.
And since you all have so much influential, I was just talking to Kelly right before this, even something like offering discounts to someone who can prove that they voted on November 6th could increase civic engagement so much and could, make people want to vote because then they get something out of it. And if we start from there, then it would turn into they're just going to want to vote. But I think they need a step in the right direction.
And also, I think that over the course of the past couple months, we've obviously gained a lot of life experience, and we've had to navigate an entire side of the world that we were never exposed to before. But even so, I think that all of you have the life experience, the work experience, and just the general knowledge and background that we lack to really help us kind of take what we're doing to the next level. And I know that one of the things that Sarah and I have talked about for Empower the People is after midterms really focusing on the educating aspect of everything. And I think that one of the huge parts of that is helping people to see how not just elections on the national level, but on the state level and the local level are of equal importance, because those are the laws and regulations that affect them every single day, and a lot of people neglect to realize that. And I think that's a really important thing, but it's just about tailoring that information in a way that they will actually grasp it. Because you can make pamphlets, and we've discussed that idea too, but they don't take the time to read it and understand it, and I think that that's an issue, and we need to figure out how to convey it to people in a way that they will actually take it and do something with it and make educated decisions and go vote.
So we're going to have a workshop after lunch, and we invite all of you to join and really dig into some of the issues of what they're trying to do and how we can help on that front. Let's talk one more question about voting. So one of the things that you guys have said is that you're not trying to change people's minds, but you're trying to get new voters out. Why'd you take that approach, and how do you think it's working?
So one of the most important things is that you need to consider all aspects of a situation before you can actually come to a knowledgeable and conclusion about it. And one of the most important things when it comes to politics and just voting in general is that everybody has a different belief about different things, and you can't discount what other people feel and automatically assume what you believe is the right thing. Because everybody's beliefs are valid, their opinions are valid. And if you discount them, then we automatically lose, because there's no way to come to a coherent and actual plausible solution if we don't all come together. And I think one of the biggest issues is that, especially when it comes to things like gerrymandering and kind of cutting out these people who don't believe or aren't going to vote the way that the legislators want them to vote. And I think that what I know they've been trying to do, what we've been trying to do, is elevate the voices of the people who don't really understand the importance of voting and actually getting them to go out and make their voices heard, because what matters is what all the people of America want, not just what certain people want.
Yeah, and in recent years, there's been a lot of voter apathy, and we understand that, but if you don't vote, then you can't complain, because a lot of people are saying that their vote doesn't count, but if all the people that say their vote doesn't count voted, the impact that they would make is astronomical.
For sure. And people say that the movement of getting young people out could make a difference in this election. So I will take this moment to say thank you to all. One of the things that we as employers have been pushing is for people say that they don't have enough time. Like one of the top reasons that they don't go is because they don't have time. So employers are lining up together to encourage their employees to vote. No meetings on election day, things like that. And I think everybody got an email on that last night. So if anybody wants to learn more, please join us. And I will take 1 second just to say thank you to John Saunders and Fleshman Hillard, because they really, this is a coalition of companies. No one company owns it, and they really stepped up and helped support the website that we put together. So thank you on that. Let's switch topics now. I think they all get we're passionate about voting. But one of the things that's incredibly unfortunate and that breaks my heart on this topic is the fact that there's so much negativity, and particularly the threats. How do you guys deal with the negative comments and the threats that have followed you as you've been activists on this topic? And give a little bit of context of the real for you guys as you've been on the bus tour and organizing the marches.
We've dealt with a lot of opposition. That's what I'm going to call it, because there's some other words that they've used towards us that they're just not appropriate for this room, or any room, really. But we do have a lot of people that, it's not even that they disagree with us, it's that they call us these awful names. They send us death threats. They swat our houses. Many members of the march did have their houses swatted, which means that people were calling in, saying that they were in the house and holding people hostage. We had so many different events on the road to change where we would have people literally trying to get physical with us. Grown adults trying to get physical with a group of teenagers that are just voicing their opinions. And it's ridiculous and it's upsetting. But at the same time, we know that the only way that we can really look at it is with a light heart. To essentially find the humor in being called a horrible, cruel name, in being called so many things that you're not, a crisis actor, media trained, paid, all of that, just vulgar words. I can't stress the vulgar words enough. I've gotten actual letters of like people just telling me that I deserve to die. But we have to keep a light heart about it, because the moment that we let that bog us down is the moment that we let them win. Because these people, they're just afraid of us. They don't have an actual standpoint against us. It's that they hate us and they fear us, so they have to be volatile and filled with vitriol. And ultimately, when we stand above that, when we share our message, when we just clear up these misconceptions, we can get so much more done than if we stoop to their level.
Sorry.
That was really well said. And something else is to find the common ground between us and then someone who's opposing our viewpoints. And if you're able to find that common ground and agree on one thing, such as like no one should be scared for their lives in school, malls, concerts, etc., and then build off from there, you can come to a logical conclusion about maybe not completely like you would never, like coming up with a logical conclusion that people should be safe and that you should have guns responsibly and that there should be some regulation.
Go ahead.
I think another thing that helps is just the inherent belief that what we're doing is the right thing, because the work that we do is emotionally draining, physically draining, but we know we're doing the right thing and we know it's what we have to do. And I think when it comes to protesters and haters, it's just remembering that and remembering why we did this in the first place, that they're not important.
Yeah, similar to what Sophie was saying, I think that it's really difficult to have a lot of people against you, but it's those people who do support you and you know you are helping that really make it a lot easier, and they remind you of why you started doing all of this in the first place. And I know that I try to share like my story and share who I am with people wherever I go, because my thought process is, okay, if they get to know me, somebody who was affected by gun violence, and they get to care about me, either I'll remind them of someone in their life that they care about, or they'll care about me, so they begin to care about gun violence as well, and they'll see that it is an issue that needs to be addressed. And I think that the positive impact of that kind of reminds me why I did it comes when people tell me that I've been told a couple of times that before meeting me, they didn't realize how terrible this issue was, how big of a problem it was, and that I really helped them to want to get involved and make a difference. And hearing that is probably one of the most incredible things ever, and it kind of just makes you feel a lot better about what you're doing and reminds you that it's worth it.
It's too much pressure on you guys. All right. I will say that Michael from Morning Consult's here, and while this has been a third rail where people think there's a majority who hold, or at least a very strong percentage, the reality of where we are and what the research says about people who support common sense gun violence prevention has gone. It is very much of a popular, and almost everyone agrees in America these days, so it is a very minor vocal minority that you're talking about. Let's switch and talk about the future. Like, what are you guys gonna do? Like, were you politically active before, and what do you see, how do you see activism playing a part in your future as you go ahead?
So I know before this, I really wasn't politically active. I always was passionate about social justice. That was always something that was really important to me. But until this, I'd never really touched the political side of things. And I've learned that it's kind of a very dirty game. Don't know that I really want to be part of it in the future. Because I get very frustrated by all these people who attack each other's character rather than the issue itself. And we get so distracted by that we lose sight of the issue at hand. And then it spirals into all these other things that it doesn't need to spiral into. And that really frustrates me. And so I don't know that that's really what I want to do with my future in a sense, but I think that there's another way to tackle politics and the issues from kind of what you guys are doing. And I think that even being at this conference has helped me see what I can do in the future and how I can help with politics and social justice from a business standpoint, because you guys do have a lot of influence. I know Sari and I have talked about this, and Sari even brought this up, that kind of made me think how businesses almost have more influence on the people of America than the government does. And I thought that was a very interesting thing, and kind of made me realize that maybe I could have more influence and actually make a bigger impact and help change people's lives who really need help from a business standpoint rather than just politics, because there's a way to be honest and actually help people while being virtuous without having to lose part of yourself to do it.
I mean, I know on February 13th, I was planning on majoring in musical theater, and after everything that happened, I realized that, I mean, the activism showed me that there's a lot more to me than just that part of my life, but also that to be in politics, you don't have to fit you don't have to look a certain way, you don't have to be a certain person. Like, politics is for everyone because politics affects everyone. And I think that's really what I've learned and what I want to show people is that, everyone needs to play an active part in your democracy.
Yeah, I mean, prior to this, my involvement in politics was getting in arguments with people about politics. That's pretty much where it ended. I went to a couple clubs, and beyond that, it was journalism. That was always my passion, and for a while after the shooting, I was really disillusioned with journalism because we had some bad interactions with the press, but then I realized that, like every other industry, it is so important to politics, and that I don't necessarily need to be a part of bureaucracy to affect social change. And that was something that was really key to me when I decided to continue to major in journalism, where I will be going to UGA in January to major in journalism. Because they are the watchdogs of democracy. And I think that every industry does play a role. And I find that all of them working in tandem is really what becomes the most successful, because for people to only think that you can get involved in politics by being a politician, that's something that we need to dismantle, because ultimately it's exclusionary and it keeps people from really realizing their true potential and their true voice. So I hope to uplift as many voices as possible in the years to come.
And I'm a little opposite, because I've always been interested and involved in politics, especially since I'm on my school debate team. But something through this journey that I've learned is I now want to clean up politics a little more and take away that perception that politics is a dirty game and really attack the issues and not the characters. So,
what are you most proud of in this work that you've done over the past several months?
I'm proud of the people that we've inspired. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back for this, but it truly is so incredible to see when people are motivated and activated to create change in their own communities. Because yeah, the work that we do, we consider to be very important, but when other people are doing that work, people who haven't even been affected by gun violence, organizing their own marches, their own voter registration drives, and having their own chapters, that is really the most impactful to us, because that's what keeps us going. That's what shows us that this movement won't die out, because the people of this country, the young people of this country, are motivated. They're dedicated to keeping this movement going, to keeping this message going. And that's really what keeps me the most proud, is that other people are doing this too, and that our movement is so much more than just a group of students from Parkland. It's international at this point.
And I think something else that has made me really proud is before, I don't think that like a lot of business communication executives would listen to a bunch of teenagers, and I think that has definitely made me really proud. And now other teenagers like ourselves feel that they have a voice and that they can create change at such a young age, and that has made me really happy. So,
I think it's hard to pick one proud moment throughout all of this, and it is bittersweet, of course, but I think that it's a combination of things. I mean, standing on the stage in Parkland, looking out at 30,000 people who were all so emotionally damaged, and all they wanted was to feel something other than anger and sadness, and being able to do that for them and give them that sense of hope. I've never felt anything close to that in my entire life, nor will I ever probably. And I think even after that, being able to create an organization and giving students at Douglas the chance to reach out to students across the state of Florida and help them implement voter registration in their school to increase civic engagement across the board, and not just with us, because we have been given this platform, and it is because of our background and where we live. And I think that there's so many people who have something to say, they just don't have the place or the opportunity to say it. And that's not fair. You shouldn't have to go through a school shooting to be able to speak your mind and say what you feel and what you believe. And I think that what I know through Empower the People, we've really been able to give these students a chance to speak their mind and actually make a change. And I think that's a really important thing, and I'm super proud of that.
I mean, I'm proud of the people that were never affected by gun violence, that are fighting right alongside of us.
You want to say anything, Tony?
Okay. They did a really good job on that one.
Sounds good. What do you hope will change in 5 years?
I hope we don't have to be doing this anymore.
Literally, we always say that like our end goal is that the March for Our Lives doesn't have to exist, that we aren't essential to our democracy, because at this point, this is pretty much the access point for young people to get engaged. This is what they know, and we want to make it a norm. We want 5 years from now it to be a norm for young people to vote, for everyone to vote, really. We want it to be something that everyone just expects to be involved in their democracy, to do some sort of civic engagement, be that protesting or organizing. It's all about just changing the culture around voting, the culture around gun violence, the culture around the way that we view politics as a whole, so that we can become a more engaged democracy that really can affect powerful social change.
And I hope people don't think of voting as a hassle, but instead of what it is, a right and a privilege. So I think that's really important.
I think also something that I really hope is that we're able to have healthy discourse, because right now that's a really difficult thing, and it's very evident, especially after what we've been through just with the topic of gun violence, that people have a really tough time with that. And when somebody disagrees with something that you feel really strongly about, it is difficult to kind of sit back and just listen to what they have to say without automatically getting up and disagreeing and arguing and trying to show them why you're right. I think that the realization comes when we acknowledge that none of us are actually right. Nobody knows how to fix any solution, any problem. There's no one single solution, and in order to have any hope of making progress and having a safer future, we need to come together and acknowledge that because nobody actually has the answers, we need each other, and everybody knows something that you don't know. You can always learn from somebody around you, no matter what it is. And I think that once we realize that and begin to take those little pieces to bring them together, we can actually come to a cohesive solution that can help us have a safer future.
Most of you have just gone back to school. How are you juggling this work with homework?
Well, it's definitely been really hard, especially since I'm taking a really heavy class load, and then during my class, I'm like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, but I'm really like sending emails or calling somebody. But, so yeah, it's definitely been stressful, but it's all worth it, and I just keep going.
definitely on top of college applications and school, and I play lacrosse with Sari. I'm involved in Temple and like all these different things. I'm on class board. It's like all the little things kind of pile up. I mean, they're all important, and I all do them for very different reasons. They all are important to me in different ways. But it's definitely difficult to balance. I've gotten so much better at time management. I was terrible at that before. Still not great, but I'm working on it. Still not good, but better. So I think that it's definitely helped me to balance everything a little bit more. I've gotten better at making good use of my time and actually getting ahead of my schedule. But I think that also at school, our teachers and peers are really understanding of the things that a lot of the students are doing, and they do what they can to help us. And I know that before I left, I was talking to my math teacher about coming here, and I had probably a 10-minute conversation with him, and he was so excited, and he couldn't wait. He told me he couldn't wait to talk to me when I got back and hear all about it. And it's just they're all so engaged, and they know that we care about it, so they care about it. And it's just this community that's been created that I think really helps make it a lot easier for us to do this while also dealing with our daily lives at home.
I mean, we're not in school right now.
We're not in school.
Tell us about your college journey, though, and how this impacted at all, those choices.
So I originally planned on going to school this fall. But after the march happened and after the summer tour happened, I think I realized that I wouldn't be able to dedicate myself fully enough to my education if I went right to school, and that there was so much that needed to be done before midterms. And I knew that I needed to be home and I needed to be working for that entire semester that I'm taking off, because it is so essential that we can make progress on voting in the midterm elections. In every election, yes, but the midterms are incredibly key to what we're doing right now. And it's not the most amazing thing in the world to know that you have to take time off from college, but I'm so happy that I'm doing it to keep working on the march, to dedicate all of my time to something that is so important to who I am, that is so important to this country. And every day, that's what keeps me going.
I mean, so much changed in my life from February 14th to graduation that I don't even think I would have been ready to leave yet. Like, I knew that I had to do this work, and I knew that this work was important, especially going into midterms, that I knew that college would be there when I was done.
Mm-hmm. I think just one last thing, I think it applies to all of us, is that you make time for the things that are important to you, and this is important to all of us, so we're going to make sure that we have the time to really put our full hearts into it.
That sounds great. Well, I don't know, we weren't planning on having questions, but I think we might have a little time. Does anybody have a question from the audience? Maybe they can tee you up, and I'll keep going.
I see one all the way in the back.
All the way in the back. Here comes the microphone, I think.
It's okay.
Well, while they're doing that, I'll keep going. What's been most surprising?
I think the most surprising thing is the fact that, like, the perceptions that people have about the March for Our Lives and about us. I've had people, my own grandparents even ask me if David Hogg was an actual student, which surprised me because I was like, you're my grandparents, you should like trust me. No, but it's always surprising to know that people's perceptions can be so influenced by the media that they consume and by the perspectives that they're seeing. But it's especially surprising to see that it can be changed so easily by just explaining things to them. Some man, I remember we had a town hall. His name was Solo. That was his name. He introduced himself as Solo. And he walks up to us and he's like, you guys want to take guns away from women that are trying to defend themselves from men that are trying to like abuse them? And we were like, no, that's literally like, we support women and we support the defense of women. We want to keep guns out of the hands of the abusers, not out of the law-abiding citizens. And after that, he kind of was just like, oh, like, cool, I guess I agree with you on that. Like, he didn't realize that he agreed with us.
But he didn't want to admit to us that he agreed with us, but he knew we were on the same page.
This was a man named Solo. I don't think he would have done that.
I don't know if he's showered in a while.
It was his only name. His name was Solo. But people don't realize that they agree with us and that they support us because of the perceptions that they have from different influences. And that's always so surprising to me, is how easy it is to change their minds just by explaining things.
I mean, I think what surprised me the most is that how many people don't vote and how many people don't participate, because I've always grown up and thought like, oh, when I'm 18, I'm going to vote in every election. Like, that's just a given. But there are so many people that weren't raised that way and don't feel that way. And I had no idea.
Apparently it's dorky to want to vote. That was where I was like,
They're like dorks.
I was called a dork for literally being excited about getting to vote, and this was before February. I was literally like, I was hyped for it, and people were like, are you kidding me? Like, really? You want to vote that badly? And I was like, yeah, you don't? But now we're trying to get everybody that excited.
I think it's working.
I think for me, I've gained a little bit more of a cynical view of things because I was surprised by how many people are so self-motivated, and I think that that's been a really tough thing to come to terms with because we've been invited to things, or even these reporters who reach out to you and they're using you for a good story because it is for their job, and I understand that, but like, we're still kids, and even that day when we left school, you have reporters on the side of the road with microphones and cameras waiting to snatch you off like flies and like just interview you right as you walk out of the building, and we're walking down the road just trying to find our parents, and we have no idea what's going on. We're confused, we're scared, we just want to go home, and like, they're standing there and it's just ridiculous, and I had no idea. And they call you all the time and like ask me all these things, and I've definitely had to get much better at sticking up for myself and what I'm comfortable with doing, and also being wary of people's motives. And I now notice that no matter what, if people reach out to help me, I always have to think, okay, why do they want to help me? Like, what are they getting out of this? And it's definitely going to help me in life, but I also wish I didn't have to think like that. But I mean, I do, because people are self-motivated. It's just how we are. And there are some people who aren't, but I mean, you just have to think about that now, and it's something that I wish I didn't, but you know, it's reality now.
Right.
Yeah. I think the most surprising thing to me is, like, when you watch the news, you think that there's two extreme opposite sides, and like what Delaney and Sophie were saying, that like, I think it's easier than people think to find that common ground. And I think that's like the most surprising thing I've learned.
Excellent.
Questions?
Yep, it's on your way. Oh, there's one in the back, and then you'll be two.
Okay, hi, good morning. My name's Andrew Blecker. I'm with Hudson's Bay Company. And, you know, first of all, thank you for all you're doing. I'm so impressed with what you've done so far, and hearing all of you personally this morning, so articulate. This is clearly such an important movement, and you've gained so much traction on social media and in the media and through all of your events. And you know, another movement that's so prevalent right now is the Me Too movement. And so, two-parter here. First of all, how do you keep this issue at the forefront when this other major issue is really out there? And how do you see the two working together?
It's interesting because something that even I believed before all of this was that you can only really care about one social movement because there's not enough time to care about it all. But there is, because there is so much intersection around it. I've worked very closely with many people that have been a huge part of the Me Too movement, especially in like recent political discourse. It's become even more prevalent, and it's become something that I've become incredibly active in as a feminist, as somebody who's an advocate for women's rights. And it's something that's very important to me that we keep the two intertwined. But it's also very essential to notice that there's different demographics that are being targeted there. Because while both do, of course, cater to the American public, we always focus on young people. It is always about young people for us, because that's who we are, that's what we were born out of, that's what our movement was born out of, and that's what we really need to keep it to, because social change has been historically created by young people. And we know that both movements are so very powerful and so important in their own rights. And that's why we try to work together when we can, but that we also know that we can be as separate and autonomous as possible.
Yeah, and no matter how hard we try, not everyone can connect to the gun violence prevention movement. And there are so many movements going on right now because of our political climate right now needs them. And I think if you have an issue that you want to vote for, then as long as you're voting, you should vote for that issue.
Yeah, we tell people that, we know that we care about gun violence prevention and that not everybody is going to care about that, but everyone cares about something. You just have to find that passion, find that something, and keep pursuing it. That's really all that it is. That is where activism is born out of. It is finding your passion, and it is pursuing your passion as much as you can in whatever ways that you can.
Good morning, Anthony Gooch from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Thank you very much for your testimony and also for your courage and and bravery. It takes quite a lot to do what you have done. I have two questions. The first one is what reverse mentoring would you provide for us, given the experience that you've had, the age range that you represent, and the desire that exists in this room to apply certain lessons in terms of activism, and at the same time we are perhaps part of different experiences to yours. And the second question relates to the system that you are inviting people to participate in. To what degree would you like to see that system evolve as well? So the participation is an important element, but are there some misgivings that you have about the democratic system as it stands now and the types of improvements that you might recommend and like to see, again, from your demographic as digital natives?
In terms of the first part of the question, it was about reverse mentoring, correct? Something that I can say as a young person is that young people love like woke capitalism. They love it. They get so excited when a company takes some sort of stance on literally anything. It could just be voting, but taking a stance on something, putting a rainbow flag on your product gets people so excited. And it sometimes is scary. It's a risk to take because it can be controversial, but it ultimately rewards in profit and in having this legend now, being this company that has taken a stance for something that is a positive thing. And in terms of the second part of your question was?
What do you want to change about
the system? Oh, right. Diversity. That's something that we're very, very, very hard pushing for, is that we need more diversity in the voices in politics because our country is diverse. Because there are so many different types of people, different types of perspectives in our country, and we need our democracy to reflect that.
And I think something else for the second part of your question is for us to listen to each other more and to make voting easier for people. Like in North Carolina, they're trying to pass an amendment where young people can show their hunting ID to vote, but they can't show their student ID. And that's a huge problem. And they need to be able to show like their student ID because that's where a lot of young people are to vote. So.
Yeah, and there's literally different voter registration laws for every single state in this country.
It's so confusing.
Every state we travel to, our voter registration had to be different because the voter laws are so complicated and messy that it's almost like people didn't want us to vote.
Voter suppression?
I think in regards to the first question, at least for Empower the People, one of the things we're doing is having students from Stoneman Douglas reaching out and making connections with students in high schools across the state of Florida. And one of the important aspects of that is that they'll make these connections. And what makes us different also from other voter registration companies is that you're actually having students make those connections. So you're not just getting these messages from some automated robot who's sending you, oh, it's this many weeks till midterms, like make sure you're registered, make sure you go out to vote. It's actually a student that you're creating a relationship with, someone who's gone through gun violence, and even though our organization is not addressing gun violence as of yet, it still is important because we care about voter registration, and in turn, they will care about voter registration. It also that relationship is really important, and I think in regards to what you guys can do, it's helping to expand that and help people to understand that their voice can be heard, helping the students of Stoneman Douglas reach out and make those connections and actually have voter registration drives that can be successful. And I know that we talked about potentially doing, a while ago, Sarah and I had discussed this, about doing something like have a concert and at colleges in Florida or even anywhere across the country, and if you register to vote, you get a free ticket and something like that. And I'm sure a lot of people would love that, and it would be a great promotion, great way to get people more involved. It's not just about making it's, I guess, to make it fun, and it's more incentive for them to go out and do it. And I think that ideas like that is where we can kind of continue to grow. And on top of that, the education piece is super important. It's about finding a way to convey things about the political process and also the candidates that are running, because a lot of people don't know anything about who's running for national, state, or local office, and that's a big issue, because how can we expect people to go out and vote if they don't know who to vote for or what the different candidates stand for? And I think that's something that we should also fix. It kind of goes for the second question too. We need to fix that, because we can't have a progressive democracy if we don't have people who can make educated decisions.
Thank you.
That was so good.
We hope you all will join us at the workshop this afternoon after lunch, and we'll continue the conversation there. So thanks again.